Okay, and welcome Facebook, welcome Instagram, welcome LinkedIn. Welcome YouTube. Can't forget YouTube. When are optional essays actually optional, and when are optional essays really just code for mandatory? Today, we are going to be diving into the world of supplemental essays for your law school applications. For those of you who are new, my name is Sydney Montgomery. I am the CEO of Montgomery Admissions Consulting, where we specialize in working with first generation and minority law school applicants. And I also happen to love the essays. I love everything about the essay process. I talked to you guys a lot about your personal statement and your diversity statement. Well, today I want to talk to you about some of these optional essays. But first, I want to talk to you about what they even are. So, we're going to cover what those different optional essays are. We're going to talk to you about how you can approach them, when you absolutely should write an optional essay if given the opportunity, what kinds of content should go in those optional essays, how you can use them to really maximize your entire application package. And then we're also actually going to talk about when you really shouldn't write an optional essay. When should you decide that this is not an essay for you and writing it will not help your application? And that can seem a little counterintuitive because we kind of maybe always think that, if it says optional, I should write it. But we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. So, the first thing that we're going to cover is what are those different optional essays. So, you know, obviously, about your personal statement, and I like to say that your diversity statement is an optional essay, but you really should write it if you can, but you don't want to force it if you can't. Most students I have found, though, do have a pretty compelling, beautiful diversity statement in them, because you guys know that I say diversity is not just limited to stereotypical markers of race, gender, culture, religion, sexuality, socioeconomics. Diversity really can be a diverse experience. It's diversity of thoughts. There are a lot of things that can go into that. It might be how you were raised, it might be being first gen, it might be having additional family responsibilities. So there's a lot of things that can go into what makes you diverse and what's good for your diversity statement. But there are some other essays that you may have come across as you're opening up your applications on LSAC, as you are researching scholarships, which you guys should always be doing. You should always be researching scholarships, whether they're institutional scholarships or outside scholarships. We're going to get into a little bit the next few weeks how to pay for law school, and that is a really big component of that, making sure that you're maximizing your scholarship opportunity. So, there are going to be some other essays that you come across. And there are going to be essays that are required if you're trying to apply maybe early decision. I know that there are some schools that have a separate essay for their early decision program. As I mentioned, some of those institutional scholarships, I think NYU is notorious for that. They have so many full ride merit-based scholarships, but they also come with so many more essays. And there's actually a link on my blog to writing those NYU scholarship essays. You'll actually also see on my blog guides to writing things like the Berkeley Public Interest Scholarship essay, some of the Penn supplements, Georgetown, Stanford, Yale. There's a lot of blogs and a lot of guides on writing some of these essays. So if you haven't already checked out my blog, make sure that you do so at smontgomeryconsulting.com/blog. Pretty simple. We try to update new blogs almost every week. So if there's ever a topic that you want us to blog about, feel free to drop me a line. Make sure that you send us an email at info@smontgomeryconsulting.com, or just let me know right down below in the comments. So I kind of ran through a bunch of schools that had some of these optional essays. Those essays are, I'm not going to say that they're mandatory, but you should definitely take advantage of them. So just some popular ones, and there's 193 law schools, so every school has some different ones. There are some schools that don't have any extra essays. And so if it's a school that doesn't have extra essays, don't just take it upon yourself to write extra essays. Sometimes students ask, well, they don't have a why this school essay. Can I write one? Probably I wouldn't, because you have to imagine, if I were doing this, what would happen if every applicant did this? Well, they'd be really overwhelmed, right? So schools that do have these extra essays also have the infrastructure. They have a large enough admissions team. They've anticipated this extra reading. So those schools like Stanford, which has those two 250 word supplements, or Georgetown, where you can pick one of those essay topics, or you can even submit a video. There's a lot of schools like Penn that will have, you can write a diversity statement, and for Georgetown and Stanford you can as well, right? But they specifically say, you can write a diversity statement, or you can write, in addition to your diversity statement or in place of your diversity statement, one of these other prompts. So Penn has a core essay, a core values essay. They have one on teamwork. There's a few there that really give you an opportunity to show more about who you are. I know Michigan also has a ton of essay options and topics in their application. Why do schools do this? Why do they give you this option? Why do they have these additional prompts? A lot of times it's because they really do want to get to know you as a person. I say this all the time: you are more than a number, you are more than your LSAT, you are more than your GPA. You have an authentic story to share. And the schools appreciate that, and they understand that it can be really difficult to fit everything that's really important to you in a 2-page personal statement. And honestly, even with an additional 1-page diversity statement, you might feel like there are things about you that you're not really able to fully convey. And of course, we have to be judicious and pick and choose what are the things that we think most represent us, most represent what we want admissions to think about as they think about our candidacy for law school. But some of these schools understand that there might be something else there that you want to talk about. And so they've given you this space. The other thing is that a lot of these schools have values that they are trying to have in their incoming class. I think Penn's essay is a perfect example of that. Their core values essay. They are trying to build a class, and they are trying to get to know, are you going to be a good fit in our community? So it's not just, like I said, about your GPA or your LSAT. Are you a good person? Are you a good citizen? Are you a good, conscientious colleague, peer? Are you going to contribute? Are you going to make this place better because you're here? Are you going to have an impact that goes beyond just when you graduate? Are you basically not just looking out for yourself and what the law degree can do for you, but are you the person that is going to say, what can I do for the school? How can I better the community? How can I, share my gifts and talents with others? And so a lot of times in these essays, they're actually able to discern based on your responses whether or not you are a good fit for the school, whether or not your values align, whether or not you are the type of person that they think will thrive in the community. Doesn't mean they don't think you're a good person or not, but just in this particular community, are you going to thrive? Is it going to help you reach your full potential? Is it going to help the law school reach its full potential? And that is very important, because if you choose not to write those essays, of course you can still get into the school, but you've missed an opportunity to really show them how you are such a great fit for that school. And sometimes, honestly, I've told students that have struggled with some of these supplements, if you're feeling like your values don't align with the questions that they're asking, it might be an indication that that school is not a good fit for you. Just because it's, ranked in the top T14 doesn't mean it's a good fit for you. You want to go somewhere where you can thrive. You want to go somewhere where you're going to be built up as an attorney. And that also means going somewhere that is a good fit. That is not going to be a place where you are going to feel frustrated or demoralized or stagnant, where you are actually going to come away with colleagues and friends for life, because that's going to be your network. They say that your network is your net worth, and that's so important. But if you go to a school that's not a good fit and you don't actually make any friends, that is such a wasted opportunity, right? If you don't connect with your peers, if you don't form these deep bonds, not only is it potentially going to hurt your law school or your legal career, because honestly, in the legal profession, networking is everything. A lot of people will tell you that the pedigree is great, but also who you know really helps you in terms of jobs. But it might hinder you when it comes to just career advancement later on down the line, when you're trying to move jobs or you're trying to venture into different things. You want a strong network behind you. You want to have created those deep bonds, and you wanted to have really found a community that's going to support your endeavors. And if you go somewhere that's not a good fit, then you won't be able to do those things. So, if through writing these supplemental essays, if you can't think of anything to say for why Duke, I don't know, maybe Duke is not the best fit for you. Just throwing that out there. You should be able to find things about the schools that, really resonate with you. Now, I will tell you, I did not follow this advice. I did not have my own back when I applied. It's been many years at this point. But I didn't write as many supplemental essays as I probably could have. It didn't actually hurt my admissions, but I think that when I think back on the schools that I didn't write those why this school essays for, they were actually schools that I wasn't really interested in and probably wouldn't have been a good fit. So I probably could have saved some application money because I hadn't really done my research as fully as I needed to into the programs, into the schools, into the people, into the community. And so that's why I really try to encourage my students to do that research so that you're comfortable and happy with the schools that you're applying to. And it makes for a more fruitful and productive decision-making process afterwards. So those type of essays, those supplemental essays that schools give, you really should try to write them if they're available. But what kind of content goes into them? How do you approach them? Well, the thing to remember is that they should not be duplicative of your personal statement or your diversity statement, right? It is a different essay. Please do not have them read the same thing more than once. You guys have heard me talk a lot about how admissions is like a puzzle, right? You want to have all these different puzzle pieces. I always say that you want to be, in a 1,000-piece puzzle instead of just a 50-piece puzzle. But I also talk to you guys about not giving me the same puzzle piece more than once, right? Do not give me 2 top right corner pieces because I don't know what to do with that. If you tell me things in your personal statement and you tell me the same exact things in a supplemental essay, I have learned nothing and I'm annoyed because I have read the same thing twice. It is a wasted opportunity. So that is why with my students, I have them do a very large universal brainstorming so that we can take from that one brainstorming session and process all of the topics that we need for personal statement, diversity statement, any supplemental essays. So when it comes down to writing the supplemental essays, I just say, okay, let's go back to our brainstorming. What stories haven't we used? What stories are important that are still available for us to use? And let's pull from those. I think that's a very kind of efficient way of going about this versus trying to do new brainstorms every time, because then sometimes you're like, oh, I thought of this really great answer for this essay, but I already wrote about it in my personal statement, so now I don't know what to do. And maybe that story belongs in the supplemental essay and not your personal statement. Or maybe it belongs in your personal statement and you just need a new supplemental essay topic. But it's always sad when it's like, oh, that essay actually is better for a supplemental essay, but I've just spent all this time working on a personal statement and I have the wrong stories in there. It's just really an inefficient use of time. So one of the first things that you should do, especially now that applications are open, a little trickier over the summer when they're not fully open, but especially now that applications are open, you should make sure that you're going through all of your schools. And I like spreadsheets. I have a spreadsheet for my students, but make your own spreadsheet and make a list of all of those supplemental essays. Now, the diversity statement prompts, they will all look different, but you should be able to kind of tell. And if you have my free guide to brainstorming your diversity statement, or if you've gotten my complete diversity statement mini course, you will see sample prompts and you'll see how they differ, because oftentimes students get confused. They're like, oh, I don't know what I should write here. And that's your diversity statement prompt. It might not look and say, please upload your diversity statement, but it will usually say something about them appreciating differences and diversity in culture, and how can you contribute to the law school. And it's not a why us essay, it's really like, how can you contribute, like how are you going to be a best citizen. And I've talked about that a lot in other diversity statement videos, so make sure to look at them if you have not. But when you're going through your applications, I want you to pull all those additional supplemental prompts, and that way you can kind of see them in one place. You can have a spreadsheet, you can stay organized, and then you can kind of go through and figure out what are the stories that you're going to need for those supplemental essays. What's not completely duplicative of what your personal statement and your diversity statement are about, So I would like a third topic, ideally. And that's really great to show that you're a multifaceted individual. For example, maybe mindfulness and meditation is really important to you, but it's not really connected to your reason why you want to go to law school, and you wrote about something else in your diversity statement, but it's still a big part of your life. That can be a fantastic way to approach a supplemental essay. Or, maybe dance is really important to you. Or, maybe you want to talk about some of your values, or faith. There's a lot of things that you can write about in these supplemental essays. Some of them have quite specific prompts, so you want to answer the prompt. But you want to be thinking about what are the pieces of my application that I feel like could be strengthened by a different piece of me. Like, how can I show them even more? Again, more, not repetitive, different, not the same. Even more of me, so that they can really see, wow, how well-rounded he is, how interesting she is. She has all these different angles. He has all these different layers. That's how they start to get to know you even more. And I've said that this process is relational, not transactional. So the more that they feel like they get to know you and like you, the better it is, right? Because you want to be forming that human connection. You want to be making that impact and that connection with the admissions. So that's kind of how I would start to approach some of those optional essays. Now, when we talk about the scholarship essays, when we talk about the public interest essays, sometimes students really get tripped up there because they're like, well, I already told them why I want to go to law school in my personal statement. So what do I do in this public interest scholarship essay? It should be consistent, right? I mean, if you told me you want to do immigration law in your personal statement, your public interest scholarship essay probably should not be on doing, housing law, because now we're inconsistent. So you do want a level of consistency there. But they can have different stories. A lot of times in the public interest scholarship essays, it's really good to highlight your own commitment to public service and community service. And so again, these are one of those things where doing a large brainstorm at the beginning and being judicious about which stories you put in your personal statement and which stories you put in your supplemental essays is important, because this is one that's going to take a little bit of strategy so that you're not writing unintentionally the same essay, but you can go deeper into some of your community service, deeper into some of the things that have made an impact. For a lot of the public interest scholarships, they are going to be looking for demonstrated commitment to public service. So not just a really strong desire, but also some demonstrated, I've been doing AmeriCorps or Peace Corps, Teach for America. I have been volunteering on these mission trips. I have helped with these nonprofits. I have started this community, fundraiser. I have gotten involved with, nonprofit groups this way. Those are sort of the things you want to make sure that you are highlighting for that demonstrated commitment. But it's not just, none of these essays are just a narrative resume, not even the public interest scholarship essays, but you want to really be focusing on why service is so important to you, why giving back is so important to you, why you have this calling, what is that internal motivation and that drive. And you're showing that through your examples, and then you're showing why the scholarship would be really important to you as well. There are some optional essays that focus on being a first-generation student. And again, you may say, but I already wrote about that in my diversity statement. Okay, well, that is an opportunity, again, to look at the different pieces of your puzzle. For that school, perhaps, you may write about a different diversity. Or if you keep that as your diversity statement in the first gen essay, you might want to go into a little bit more specifics than maybe you had space to do in the diversity statement. A lot of those essays really do want to understand kind of the hurdles that you have overcome, which you can talk about first gen and have a completely different angle. But you want to talk about the hurdles that you've overcome in that particular type of essay where they're asking about being first gen and it's a first gen scholarship. What are those obstacles that you've overcome? How have you overcome them? What has this experience done to your perspective? That's really important, right? How do you see the world differently because of your first gen experience? And so it's really focused right there on that, whereas your diversity statement has an opportunity to be a little bit more layered. There are some other scholarships as well that have different prompts. There are also some programs that have different access points. Like Temple and Seton Hall have one, and sometimes that comes with its own essay to really show how you're eligible for those different access points. And, like I said, there are some early decision programs that have an essay tied with it too, usually surrounding why that school is such a great fit for you. It's basically a YS essay. Now, in these YS essays, you want to still be giving them more about you. So you want to be bridging the connections, but you want it to be genuine. You don't want it to seem forced. You don't want it to seem like you just copied and pasted. Even if you did just copy and paste, there's ways to make it really feel genuine and feel specific to that school. You want to make sure that you're not just regurgitating what's on the website. You really want to do your research, talk to people, have connections, figure out what is important to you about the schools that you're going to, what is important to you, like if you were trying to make a decision between schools, what is important for you for thriving. And then you want to, incorporate that in your why this school essay, pulling in your own personal things, your own personal qualities and experiences, and pulling in genuine things that really attract you to that school. Now, we've gone over the different types of those optional essays. We've also gone over what you should do to kind of approach these essays, how you can best leverage your content in a holistic way. I want to talk to you a little bit about when you should not write an optional essay. And perhaps we go back to my story about why I did not write a why Duke. I did not have genuine reasons for applying to Duke other than my fascination with going somewhere warm, because it was very cold in Princeton that year, and I dreamed of the sun. And this notion that, everyone in the South gets a ring by spring. I was 20, and that seemed exciting to me as well. So those were basically my reasons for applying to Duke. I did get into Duke. Duke is a fantastic school. So I would have been happy, probably, if I had chosen to go to Duke. But I didn't actually do any research. I didn't have compelling reasons for applying to Duke. Again, that probably should have been a red flag for me. But I knew that I could not write a good essay. And this is really important. I think that it can definitely help and benefit your applications to write these supplemental essays and these optional essays. But a bad essay can hurt your application more than not writing an essay at all. All of your essays need to be strong. Your personal statement should be strong. Your diversity statement should be strong. Your optional essays should be strong. Sometimes students spend all this time on the personal statement, all this time on the diversity statement, and they just put some, I don't know what together for these optional essays. They just be throwing them together. And it really shows. It's lazy, it looks sloppy, and it detracts from all the hard work that you have done. So if you are going to write these optional essays, which I think that you should, do not just rush them at the last minute, put anything together and then hit submit, because it's not going to happen. That is going to really send a message about what you care about and what you don't care about. And the worst thing is to tell them that you don't care about why you want to go to their school, because that's kind of a slap in the face. They read it as they're like, wow, they didn't even bother. They didn't even try. That doesn't make them feel great. That doesn't make them want to accept you. So you should write these essays when you know that you can do them well, and you know that you have something compelling to say, and you know that you have another piece of you to show them. But you should not force them because you feel like you have to write them, because if you write bad essays, that will hurt you so much more than not writing an essay at all. So do not just, again, copy and paste from the website, or I want to go to your school because it's ranked number 4. Please don't do that, because that just tells me all you care about is prestige, and if we suddenly were the same school but ranked lower, you wouldn't want to go to us. And maybe that's true, but they don't want to hear that. Don't just copy paste from your personal statement and put it in, in that YS essay or any of those other scholarship essays. Really take your time And like I said, if there's a public interest scholarship, but you don't have any demonstrated public interest, and you don't feel like you can write a good public interest scholarship essay, I mean, you can write one even if you don't have as much public interest. I'm not discouraging you from applying, but you still want it to be a strong essay. And if you can only give me a paragraph out of a 500-word essay, that's an essay that I don't think is going to go your way. If you are grasping for straws, even with the diversity statement, as much as I say that I think most people can write a beautiful and compelling diversity statement, if you don't feel like it's authentic, if you don't feel like you have something to share, if you don't feel like it's really representative of who you are, but you're just writing it because you feel like you have to, that will come across and it will fall so flat. So the takeaway is that you should absolutely write these optional essays, to help your application, to show a different side of you, to show more of you when you can do it well. But you should not write these essays when you know that submitting it is actually going to hurt your application, because it's not going to be as strong as any of the other essays in your application. It's going to be significantly weaker, and maybe it comes off as sloppy and lazy. That's when you absolutely do not want to write an optional essay. So hopefully that was helpful. Like I said, we covered what those optional essays are, when you should try to write them if given the opportunity, how you should go about brainstorming and developing content for them, and then honestly when you should skip writing them and when it's not something that's going to help your application, but instead it's going to hurt your application. So I am going to stop here and see if there are any questions. Let's see, does anyone have kind of any questions about optional statements? Feel free to also tell me where you are in the application cycle. I always love hearing from that. I've also put in the links below my links to the free planning and perfecting your personal statement guide, and the free brainstorming your diversity statement guide. Both of those are free. Definitely feel free to grab those, get your copy and download it. We're kind of always here for you. We're wrapping up the busy season, which is very exciting for me, as we go into the holiday season, which is my favorite season. And acceptance season, which is fantastic. Shout out to one of my students this week for getting into Georgetown. I am so proud of him. I love acceptance season so much. I really do. Essays are my favorite thing, but it's really good to transition into acceptance season. So definitely, as you're following me and going on this journey, let me know where you've gotten in. We'll in a few months start doing shout outs on our Instagram to our students who have crushed it. We're always so proud of them, but I'm always so proud of you as well, even if you're not working with me. So definitely let me know where you are and where you've gotten in, so we can make sure to celebrate you as well. So if there aren't any questions, I am going to pray us out, and then I will just see you guys next week, where I think we're going to talk a little bit more about financial aid, but we'll see. Dear Heavenly Father, I just want to say thank you for this time and this moment. Thank you for allowing us to come together to get crucial advice on the law school application process, and to think deeply about what it is that we want to say, what it is that we want to convey to admissions. I ask that you give discernment in the brainstorming process. Help them as they are trying to choose the stories that best go in their personal statement, choose the stories that best go in their diversity statement, choose the stories that best go in optional essays. Help them be able to think deeply about their experiences and the moments that have shaped them, the moments that have guided them and made them who they are. Help them as they try to discern their calling for their path, that they would be just comforted and filled with joy and happiness as they are going through this process that is often very stressful. So I'm asking that you would insert some joy, some laughter, and some happiness into the process. I'm also asking that you give them wisdom and discernment on when to write optional essays and how to write them. I ask that you would give them the wisdom to know when an essay will help their application and when it will not. That you give them discernment over the schools of their list, and whether or not, based on the prompts, those schools are actually good fits for them. I ask that you help them look through the character, the values, the communities of the school, and look past superficial markings such as, U.S. News and World Report rankings, but really look toward how the school will help uplift them as a future attorney and how they will thrive there. I ask that you be with them in the writing process, that you would give them divine time management skills such that they are not rushing to put together essays at the last minute, but that they are working in an abundance of time and overflow, that they have given themselves enough time for several edits, that they have given themselves time to sit with an essay topic, to think about it, to mull it over, that they have given themselves permission to fully lean into the beauty of the writing process and not get overly stressed by the rat race of applying early or rolling admissions. I ask that you would also give special wisdom to those who are still deciding in these next week and a half, whether or not they want to apply early decision to a school, whether or not that school is a good calling for them. I ask that you would be with them as they make that decision from a financial standpoint, as well as an academic, social, and emotional standpoint. I ask that you would be with everyone just to calm their nerves and their anxieties. As people are going into the November LSAT next week, I ask that you would be with them in their studying, be with them in their mindfulness and their ability to focus, to take good deep breaths, to have good time and pacing. I pray over the proctoring, I pray over the technical aspects of the exam, but mostly I pray for confidence and peace. That there would be a removal of the pressure that they've put on themselves in this process, and that they would give it to you, dear Heavenly Father. I ask that they would surrender their law school applications to you and your divine will and your divine timing, and that everything happens for a reason, and you're going to open the doors that they need in order to fulfill the calling that they have in their life. I thank you for their dedication and their yearning and their desire to make an impact on the communities. I ask all of this in your Son's precious name. Amen. So guys, I hope that you have more clarity on these optional essays, that you would feel confident in the essays that you choose to write and confident in the essays that you choose not to write. As always, if you need any help, you can always reach out to us. You can also look at any of our hourly consulting services. We would love to help you through this process. And I will see you guys very soon next week.